She said, "It's my money. I don't need your permission to spend it." After buying luxuries while I paid our bills, I replied, "You're right. You're an independent woman." I then opened my own private bank account. She discovered what her money really meant when an eviction notice showed up because she couldn't afford her half of the rent. I work in logistics for a large shipping company. My entire job is about managing systems. I track inputs, outputs, and the flow of resources. If a truck leaves the warehouse with a full load but arrives at its destination half empty, you have a problem. You have a leak. You have to find the source of the leak, and you have to fix it, or the whole system eventually collapses. For the last 2 years of our 6-year relationship, my life with my ex-girlfriend, Clara, was a system with a catastrophic, unfixable leak. When we first got together, we were a team. We were both in our mid-20s, just starting our careers, and we were scrappy. We built our life together from the ground up. I'm a planner, a saver. I get a quiet satisfaction from watching a savings account grow, from knowing there's a buffer for emergencies. Clara was not like that. She was a live-in-the-moment person. I thought her spontaneity balanced my careful planning. It took me years to realize she wasn't balancing me. She was just draining my resources. The financial arrangement we made when we moved in together was simple and I thought fair. I made about 30% more than she did, so we agreed on a 60-40 split for all our shared bills. We set up a joint account. Each month, we were supposed to deposit our respective shares to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and other shared costs. Whatever was left in our personal accounts was our own fun money. It was a good system, a logical system. And for the first few years, it worked. The leaks started small. About 3 years ago, I noticed our joint account was running low a few days before the end of the month. I checked the statements. I had put my 60% in, but her 40% was short by a couple $100. When I asked her about it, she was full of apologies. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Mark. I had to get my car serviced, and it was more than I expected. I'll make it up next month, I promise." I believed her. I covered the shortfall. But next month it was something else. A surprise vet bill for her parents' dog. A dental emergency. The excuses were always plausible, and I was always the one making up the difference. Then the luxury items started appearing. She worked as a junior marketing associate, a job with a modest, predictable salary. Yet, she started coming home with designer handbags, expensive shoes, and the latest tech gadgets. We're not talking about thousands of dollars at once, but a steady, constant stream of purchases that I knew her leftover, fun money couldn't possibly cover. I remember one specific Saturday. I had spent the day replacing the worn-out brakes on my very practical, very paid-off sedan. It was a greasy, frustrating job, but it saved us about $600. I came inside, hands raw and covered in grease, feeling pretty good about my fiscal prudence. Clara walked in an hour later, glowing, holding a brand new handbag that I knew for a fact cost more than the brakes I'd just spent my entire day fixing. "Do you like it?" she asked, twirling in the living room. "It's the new seasonal color." "It's nice," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "How'd you swing that?" "Oh, I've been saving up," she said breezily. That night, I checked the joint account. She hadn't put her share in for the groceries that week. I had covered it again. She wasn't saving. She was just reallocating her financial responsibilities to me so she could afford her luxuries. The leaks were getting bigger. The system was starting to strain. The real damage started with her big trip. Her group of friends decided to go to Europe for 2 weeks. It was an expensive, multi-city tour. I was happy for her, but I asked her how she was planning to pay for it. "Don't worry," she said. "It's all coming out of my personal savings. It won't affect our budget at all." She went on the trip. My social media was flooded with pictures of her drinking wine in Paris, eating pasta in Rome, and riding a gondola in Venice. She looked like she was having the time of her life. She came back full of stories and bearing a small, cheap souvenir for me. The month after she got back, she only deposited about 20% of her share into our joint account. The excuse? "I'm just so broke after Europe." You wouldn't believe it. I covered the rest. All of it. The rent, the utilities, the groceries. My savings took a massive hit that month, all to pay for the lingering financial hangover of her European fantasy. The final, system-breaking event happened 6 months ago. She decided her perfectly fine, reliable car was embarrassing. Without consulting me, without any discussion about our shared budget, she went out and leased a brand new, expensive SUV. The monthly payment was astronomical. When I saw the new car in our driveway and she told me the monthly cost, my logistician's brain almost short-circuited. "Clara, how can you possibly afford this?" I asked her, trying to stay calm. "You can barely make your share of the rent as it is." And that's when she delivered the line that would end our relationship. She looked at me, her face a mask of defiance and entitlement, and said the words that changed everything. "It's my money," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "I have a career. I work hard for my money. I don't need your permission to spend it on things that make me happy." I just stared at her. My money, the money I used to pay for our roof, our food, our electricity, that was our money. But her money, that was her money. The hypocrisy was so perfect, so complete, that I didn't even get angry. I just felt a sense of profound clarity. The system wasn't just leaking. It was a complete and total failure. The partnership I thought we had was an illusion. I wasn't her partner. I was her primary source of funding. I looked at her, standing there in front of her new car, and I just nodded. "You're right," I said, my voice calm. "You're an independent woman. Your money is your own." The look of triumph on her face was something to behold. She thought she had won. She had finally put me in my place and established the rules of our relationship for good. She had no idea that I was not just agreeing with her, I was accepting her terms. And I was about to restructure our entire operation based on this new, brutally honest understanding. The next day, I began the process of what I now refer to as the Great Financial Uncoupling. It wasn't a secret. It was a series of calm, logical, administrative steps. First, I went to the bank. I opened a new, private checking account in my name only. I rerouted my direct deposit from my job to this new account. Second, I sat down with our bank statements from the last 2 years. It took me an entire weekend. I created a spreadsheet, a beautiful and terrifying document that detailed every single deposit and withdrawal from our joint account. I calculated down to the dollar the exact percentage of our shared life I had been funding. The final number was 84%. For 2 years, I had been paying for 84% of our life together, while she was paying 16%. Third, I drafted an email to her. It was polite, professional, and completely devoid of emotion. It felt like a memo I would send at work to announce a change in shipping protocols. The email explained that, in full support of her stated desire for financial independence, I was dissolving our joint account. I explained that I had opened a new personal account. I then proposed a new, fairer system for managing our shared household. There would be no more joint account. I would pay my half of the rent directly to our landlord. She would be responsible for paying her half directly. I would keep the electricity and water bills in my name, and she could take over the internet and gas bills. We would split groceries week by week. I attached the spreadsheet as a reference to show her why this new, transparent system was more equitable. I framed the entire thing as a positive step, a way to empower her and support the independence she so clearly valued. I ended the email with, "I think this is the best way to honor your perspective on personal finances. I completely support you." She read the email, and to my surprise, she was thrilled. She saw it as a massive victory. She didn't even look at the spreadsheet. All she heard was, "I'll stop nagging you about your spending." She saw it as me finally surrendering, finally accepting her terms. She agreed immediately. For the first week of the new system, she was on top of the world. She went on a massive shopping spree. With the money that was no longer being funneled into a boring joint account, she was free. She came home with bags from expensive stores, a new laptop, and tickets to a music festival. She was living her best, most independent life. The first sign of trouble came about 10 days later. The internet bill, which was now in her name, was due. I got a notification that our Wi-Fi had been shut off. I politely reminded her that it was her responsibility now. She paid it, but with an audible, annoyed huff. A few days later, her new car payment was due. I saw her staring at her banking app, a look of genuine stress on her face. The real test, of course, was the rent. It was due on the 1st of the month. On the 28th, I made a clean online payment of my exact 50% share to our landlord. I knew, based on the numbers in my spreadsheet and her recent spending, that there was a statistical certainty she did not have her half. The first of the month came and went. The air in our apartment was thick with a tension only I seemed to understand. On the third of the month, a polite reminder email from our landlord arrived, addressed to both of us. On the fifth, as is standard legal procedure, a formal notice to pay rent or quit was posted on our front door. It was bright pink. You couldn't miss it. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she came out of her room and saw it. She let out a little shriek. She ripped it off the door and stormed over to me, her hands shaking. "What is this?" she yelled, waving the pink paper in my face. "It's an eviction notice. We're being evicted." "Not we," I said calmly, taking a sip of my coffee. "You. I paid my half of the rent. You can call the landlord and confirm. The overdue amount is your share." The look of pure, uncomprehending panic on her face was a sight to behold. "But you're supposed to cover me. You always have." "That was under the terms of our old partnership," I explained, as if I were talking to a new employee. "The one where we were a team. But you ended that partnership. You declared your financial independence. This is what independence looks like, Clara. It means you are responsible for your own share. The landlord doesn't care about your new shoes. He cares about the rent." She spent the next few days in a frantic scramble. She tried to get a loan. She tried to sell some of her new luxury goods online for a fraction of what she paid. She called her friends, but they were all in the same boat of living beyond their means. Finally, she had to make the one call she had been avoiding. She had to call her parents. I wasn't there for the conversation, but I heard the aftermath. Her father came over. He looked tired and profoundly disappointed. He wrote a check to the landlord to cover her rent, but he gave her a lecture that I could hear through the closed bedroom door. The fantasy of the high-flying, independent woman crashed into the humiliating reality of a parental bailout. The apartment was never the same after that. The joy was gone, replaced by a cold transactional bitterness. She couldn't afford her lifestyle and her half of the bills. The new car she was so proud of became a source of monthly terror. She finally had to admit defeat. A month later, she told me she was moving out. She moved back into her parents' house to save money. The expensive SUV was repossessed a few months after that because she couldn't keep up with the payments. I'm still in the apartment. I can easily afford it on my own. It's quiet now. The closets aren't overflowing with things we can't afford. The budget is balanced. The system is efficient. She said she was an independent woman and that her money was her own. I didn't get revenge. I just agreed with her. I gave her exactly the independence she asked for. She just never realized that independence had a price tag. And it was a price she absolutely could not afford to pay.